everybody, Craig Warrack here and welcome back to part 2 of my Secret Santa project for 2015. In the previous episode I received a list that I had to choose a custom from and I broke it down to 4 possible choices. They were Apocalypse from Marvel Comics, Krang from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Professor Xavier with a hover chair from Marvel Comics, and a space pirate from Metroid Prime. And I thought long and hard about it, and no prizes for guessing who I'm going with. It's Ensabonur himself, Apocalypse. Now the reason I went with Apocalypse here is because last year I did Shredder in a particular style that the customer wanted, and I found that I couldn't really get into it all that much. But hopefully with Apocalypse, I know more about his backstory and the character, so I'll be able to get more personally involved and hopefully come up with some nice little design touches for the final figure. So if you've watched any of my Secret Santa projects before, you'll know that my second step after deciding on a custom is to research the character. And as you can see here, I've been doing my visual research at least. But of course I've also been going through back issues via Marvel Unlimited subscription, and I've also been trailing Wikipedia, to be honest, to find out more about the character. Personally, Apocalypse is a character that I've never quite understood. While he has a really clear and simple motivation, survival of the fittest, his power set is really nebulous, and it seems to go from telepathy, telekinesis, to energy absorption and manipulation, to changing his physical size, to making drills out of his hands, making hammers, to changing his feet into rocket jets. Just seems to be anything and everything. Which, you know, that's fine for a bad guy, to be honest, but then to try and work all that sort of stuff into a figure design, it's a little tricky. Now, Apocalypse has had quite a few origin stories over the years, but the one that's generally accepted is that he was the first mutant, and he was born in ancient Egypt to a nomadic tribe. Blah blah blah, lots of ancient Egypt tribe, pharaoh, blah blah blah, mutant powers coming out, grey skin, blue lips, whatever. Anyway, Apocalypse finds a celestial spaceship and uses its technology to enhance himself and set out for revenge or something, I don't know. So really, Apocalypse is an ancient Egyptian, grey-skinned, giant guy who has enhanced himself with celestial technology. Catchy, huh? And for me, that's going to be the crux of this project, is trying to balance that established first appearance sort of look of Apocalypse, which my customer has said he's looking for in the Street Fighter vs. X-Men story, but I also want to bring in that ancient Egyptian look without going too far into that way, because Brian Singer will know what I'm talking about here. That ain't so popular sometimes. So yeah, I'm going to have to try and find a way to balance those two sides. You know, just making the form that everyone is used to because they saw it in an action figure or a video game, along with something that's a bit more representational of the character's history and gives it a bit of an artistic flair or interest. So yes, I've got all my Apocalypse pictures up here, and I've also weeded out some of my old Apocalypse figures. I do remember having the X-Men vs. Street Fighter Apocalypse figure, came with Dalsim. I still have Dalsim, but I can't find Apocalypse anywhere, so I've no idea what happened. So the earliest Apocalypse figure, careful big guy, that I have is this guy, which I think he is from the Onslaught wave of figures back in the 90s, from early Toy Biz, and I believe he's called Apocalypse Rising. And he's from an issue in the Onslaught saga where Apocalypse rises from his slumber, and he's got these red sort of mummified wrappings around him, which I think is quite a neat look. So I don't know if that'll be appearing at some point in my take on the character. Perhaps. Then next up we have the first Marvel Legends version of Apocalypse. This is actually a half-arsed sort of custom I was trying to do. I tried to improve the figure. The figure was very squat and stout, so I tried to lengthen the legs and add shoulder armour and what have you, but I just got bored and gave up. It's not a great figure, to be honest. It's from a storyline from the early 2000s, I believe, that was called The Blood of Apocalypse. And I've got some images of that story up here as well, just to, you know, add in that look for him. If I want to go that way, that is. And then next up is the big guy himself. This is the Build-A-Figure Apocalypse, which is way too big. I don't remember him ever appearing at this size, except for in the X-Men vs Street Fighter game, of course. I've got pictures of that here, where he's a giant thing that just hits you with his fist and tries to drill you. Whatever. Good plan, Apocalypse. And I've got pictures of him in his normal sized form over here before he goes all giant and punchy. And then, don't hate me for this, I do actually have a Marvel Universe figure here. I have to keep it in its package unless the evil of its scale escapes. No, just joking. I know some people are big fans of this, and this looks like actually a great figure. This is a look of Apocalypse from a more modern comic, Messiah War. This was a crossover between X-Force and I think it was Cable at the time. They journeyed way into the future and Apocalypse was almost dead. Archangel brought him back to life and this was the look that he has. I think it's a cool look and a cool figure, but I don't think it's really something that I'm going to be going for this time. And then scattered around the walls I've got some other pictures. The X-Men Evolution Apocalypse back here just for reference. He has some sort of cool light up lines across his body, kind of Tronish. That's something that could be used for some Egyptian hieroglyphy. And then we've got some other looks, like here we've got a look from the battle that everyone wanted to see, Apocalypse versus Dracula. I know, right? But I kind of liked in this, they worked his celestial sort of technology armour into more of a sort of a Pharaoh's sort of style. It's an interesting take. We'll see what happens there. And then finally we've got this figure here that I've also been looking at. It's Scarabus from the Gothropolis line by the Four Horsemen. The reason I've got this is because it's obviously a very Egyptian style figure, and I can look at how you can translate some of those Egyptian sort of looks onto an action figure at this scale. He's a pretty cool figure. So I think I've done my research into the character well enough that I can sort of draw on that when I go to design him. What I'm looking to do is match the customer's desire for this to be an 8-inch action figure, and getting out the old measuring tape. 8 inches is this much, which I think luckily squares up nicely with recent Build-A-Figures. So this could well be the base body that I'm going to go with. Ow. Ultimate Green Goblin, and luckily as well, these things are 10 a penny over here. That Spider-Man line is clearance the fuck out of itself. So I've got plenty of access to all of these. So is that something I can use for interchangeable parts? Perhaps, you know, if I could do those drill hands and his gun hands and his hammer legs and oh god, who knows what, that'd be a cool thing to have. Even though I'm not really into that, I'm sure the customer would appreciate that. But given that this guy has clawy feet and clawy hands and these sort of things, I might be calling on the Build-A-Figure of Thanos. Hey Thanos, to lend some of his limbs or gloves or something, just to save me that work of having to sculpt all of that, and especially feet. I actually have a problem sculpting feet. I sculpted a Thanos from a figure similar to this. It was actually a Hulk, and I don't think I quite nailed the feet, so I'd like to get that down by using some already made feet. I also think this figure has a good range of articulation, which would be good for Apocalypse, and particularly it doesn't have waist articulation, which in this case I would normally want there to be a waist articulation. I think that's a good thing. Apocalypse has the A on his belt in almost every incarnation, which makes zero sense to me, to have an ancient Egyptian guy who goes into celestial technology and comes out with like a modern A, capital A, a daddy A on his belt so that everyone knows he is Apocalypse. Ugh. I'll see what I can do about that. There's probably some of these takes will have dealt with that, so I'll take a look into how people are making that less ridiculous. Can you make this guy less ridiculous? But anyway, whether it's an A or a lightning bolt or whatever the hell's going to appear there, if there was waist articulation, it would be broken up by that. So the lack of waist articulation is actually good. It opens that area up for a bigger design of something. Good stuff. And I've already been scribbling down some ideas for Apocalypse. I've just sort of sketched out the basic form of the figure, and then I've just been sketching on where I think the details should fall, having a go with some of that A thing and the thing across his waist, and then trying to work in maybe an Egyptian sort of, I want to say skirt, I don't know if that's correct, and then also around the collar something a little bit more Egyptian. But you know, when I look at it, it's maybe going over the top with the Egyptian stuff. I'm not too sure. So that'll be something that I'm going to try and balance, like I said. So there we have it. That's me done my research and started scribbling down some ideas. I've looked at the images, I've looked at the figures, I've looked at the character's backstory and their powers, and I've looked at how I can try and fit this onto existing base bodies, and I've tried to lay down some of my initial thoughts about the character. So enough procrastination, I better get customizing. So join me in the next video when I'll have done some work to get this started and hopefully show you some of the techniques that I've been using, and then we can get further into making this base body into Apocalypse. So I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.